You're listening to Paranormal Optimist. My name is Stephanie, and in this podcast, we dissect paranormal topics from the perspective of skeptics, believers, and everyone in between. At the end, it's up to you to decide. Are you a paranormal optimist? Hello and welcome to another episode of Paranormal Optimist. I have another deep dive for us today. So before I spiral down that rabbit hole, here's just a quick reminder that you can find where to follow the show through the links in the episode description. If you have an episode suggestion, an experience you'd like to share, or would just like to chat, please send me an email at paranormaloptimist@gmail.com. So if you've been listening in order, then you know that we have been diving deep into this question of whether or not we are alone in the universe. Spoiler, or maybe not, but I will never believe that we are alone. I have been pretty transparent about what my bias is on this topic. We've discussed the history of people asking this question, and we even got to talk to an expert in the field of space health. So really, what else is there to say? The truth is, if you've made it this far, you already have an opinion on this topic, and it's not likely to change. For better or for worse, that is certainly the case for me. But what would happen if we found proof of extraterrestrial life? I'm not talking about UFOs or even SETI picking up an intentional and somehow decipherable message. That would be loud and chaotic. I'm talking about a truth that is quieter and far more likely. A whisper from a past so ancient, we can't even wrap our tiny human minds around how old it is. I'm talking about alien artifacts, not on Earth, but out there, somewhere in the darkness of space. Because that's where the aliens live. Today, we'll talk about an example from recent memory where for a moment, an interstellar visitor was spotted in our own solar system. A drama unfolded, lines were drawn, and in my opinion, the true face of modern science and the scared humans behind it was revealed. It's an interesting case where the actual truth of the story might not be as important as how we reacted to it. And what does that say about us? We are talking about Oumuamua. In my experience, you either have strong, burning opinions about this topic, or this is the first time in your entire life that you are hearing this word. If you find yourself in that second category, I will try to help. What is Oumuamua? On October 6, 2017, an object entered the orbital plane of our solar system. Robert Warwick, a scientist reviewing data collected by the Pan-STARRS telescope at the Haleakala Observatories in Maui, Hawaii, discovered the existence of this anomalous object over a week after its appearance in our solar system. This discovery, which was made on October 19th, was extremely exciting. It was the first time in history that humans have been able to identify an interstellar object in our neighborhood. To be clear, nobody believes that this was the first time an interstellar object entered our solar system at all, but it was the first time that we had been able to detect it with our own instruments. We have since gone on to identify and observe others, but Oumuamua was the first. Another point to clarify is that space and our own solar system is full of what we call objects. Comets, asteroids, fragments, debris. There's tons of stuff out there. So while finding something visiting us from another star system was incredibly exciting, the excitement definitely did not come from us believing that it was aliens, because absolutely nobody believed that. When researchers started analyzing the data so that they could classify what type of object it was, Oumuamua got more interesting. It seemed that our interstellar friend wasn't an asteroid, and it was just a bit too spicy to be a run-of-the-mill comet. And this is where the drama began. The main reason why the average person outside of the scientific community has even heard about Oumuamua is due in large part to the writing of a man named Loeb. If you know who this man is, odds are you already have a pretty strong opinion about him. He seems to be one of those polarizing figures in the culture of popular science today. As a tangent, how fascinating is it that we even have polarizing figures in science? But anyway, Loeb had a lot to say about Oumuamua, and a lot of people in the scientific community did not like it. Although Loeb wrote articles closer to the sighting and collaborated with others to research Oumuamua, most of the information I am going to reference regarding his own arguments comes from his book Extraterrestrial, the first sign of intelligent life beyond Earth. While Loeb discusses Oumuamua at length, to me, the true objective of this book is to question not whether we are alone in the universe, but whether we are ready to learn that we are not. If you consider the debate surrounding Oumuamua with this context in mind, I think that answer becomes painfully clear. Before we dive into the drama surrounding Avi Loeb, let's just talk briefly about some non-Loeb thoughts on the nature of Oumuamua. There is a page on science.nasa.gov which offers a brief overview on this topic. According to that page, Oumuamua is the first confirmed object from another star to visit our solar system. We already knew that part, of course, but the website goes into the name Oumuamua itself, which roughly translated from the Hawaiian language means a messenger from afar arriving first. I've read other translations of the name reduced down to something simpler like visitor or even scout, but they all imply the same idea. As for what Oumuamua actually is, the page has this to say. Preliminary orbital calculations suggest that the object came from the approximate direction of the bright star Vega in the northern constellation of Lyra. While originally classified as a comet, observations revealed no signs of cometary activity after it slingshotted past the sun on September 9th, 2017, at a blistering speed of 196,000 miles per hour, or 87.3 kilometers per second. It was briefly classified as an asteroid until new measurements found it was accelerating slightly, a sign it behaves more like a comet. So, where does Avi Loeb come in? Who is he, and why do people love him or love to hate him when it comes to Oumuamua? Loeb dedicates several snippets from his book to discussions of his past experiences and background. He is undeniably gifted when it comes to literary prose and does an artful job of connecting who he is as a person to the work that he does. But to be concise today, I am just going to read directly from his bio on the Harvard University Department of Astronomy page. Abraham Avi Loeb is the Frank B. Baird Jr. Professor of Science at Harvard University. He received a PhD in physics from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem in Israel at age 24, led the first international project supported by the Strategic Defense Initiative, and was subsequently a long-term member of the Institute for Advanced Study at Princeton. Loeb is the director of the Institute for Theory and Computation within the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, and also serves as the head of the Galileo Project. He had been the longest-serving chair of Harvard's Department of Astronomy and the founding director of Harvard's Black Hole Initiative. He is an elected fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, the American Physical Society, and the International Academy of Astronautics. Loeb is a former member of the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology, a former chair of the Board on Physics and Astronomy of the National Academies, and a current member of the Advisory Board for Einstein Visualize the Impossible of the Hebrew University. He chaired the advisory committee for the Breakthrough Starshot Initiative and served as the science theory director for all initiatives of the Breakthrough Prize Foundation. Whew! As a layperson, that bio is pretty damn intimidating. It's also extremely long. But the more I research, the more I start to feel that it is now more important than ever to question experts, not in a rude or ignorant way, but in a responsible way. When I initially read Extraterrestrial, my main theory regarding the criticism of Loeb and his work was that his optimism regarding the possibility of extraterrestrial life and his willingness to spend time entertaining what-if scenarios created the controversy between him and the world of conservative science. I'll address some of Loeb's ideas, the criticism of those ideas, as well as how he responds to that criticism, and you can decide for yourself where you stand on this debate. I will admit with some surprise that I have shifted slightly in my thinking. To review, scientists who are not named Avi Loeb argue that Oumuamua must be some type of comet that visited our system from another star. Loeb, however, provides several reasons as to why he personally believes the comet hypothesis does not work. So let's dig into some of those reasons now. Shape. I have seen some differing descriptions of the size and shape of Oumuamua. An estimate for the size from the NASA page states that Oumuamua is up to 1/4 mile or 400 meters long and highly elongated, perhaps 10 times as long as it is wide. In Loeb's book, he describes Oumuamua as being roughly 100 yards long and 10 yards wide. So that's a pretty huge discrepancy in the size, but both estimates do paint the picture of an extremely elongated object. As for the actual shape, about half of the sources I have read list it as a cigar shape, while the other half list it as pancake shaped. The NASA page prefers the cigar shaped label, while Loeb himself prefers the pancake visual. Regardless of the precise size and regardless of whether you want to call it a cigar or a pancake, this shape is extreme. According to both Loeb and the NASA page, there has never been a comet sighted that has been anywhere near this flat or elongated. So, if it is a comet, it's the first of its kind that we have ever observed. Reflectivity. Observations of Oumuamua also indicate that it is made of highly reflective material. Comets have been known to be reflective based on the elements of their composition, but not to the degree observed in Oumuamua. If Oumuamua is a comet, parts of it would be 10 times more reflective than the most reflective comet we have ever observed. On this point, the NASA page states, combining the images from the FORS instrument on the ESO telescope, using 4 different filters with those of other large telescopes, a team of astronomers led by Karen Meach of the Institute for Astronomy in Hawaii found that Oumuamua varies in brightness by a factor of 10 as it spins on its axis every 7.3 hours. No known asteroid or comet from our solar system varies so widely in brightness with such a large ratio between length and width. So again, if it's a comet, it's a very special and irregular comet. Orbits. The most interesting point to me about Oumuamua is its strange orbital behavior. When you look at the path that Oumuamua followed while in our solar system, the trajectory doesn't quite make sense when you consider the effect the sun's gravity should have had on the object. Observations of Oumuamua, as captured by various instruments at different facilities, indicated that Oumuamua accelerated away from the sun. Now, I want to be honest here and confess that because I didn't understand a few key details about this observation, I thought it sounded incredibly interesting. I was basically ready to accept Oumuamua as a probe sent by an alien intelligence, and I was ready to get up in arms about the fact that scientists were out there lying to our faces and calling it a comet. But then I took a breath and kept reading, which is always the right call. Acceleration in a comet is actually a common phenomenon, and it's not the slightest bit paranormal. I'm sorry. There is a process called outgassing, which gives some comets this ability. Basically, the heat from the sun melts trapped ice. When the melted ice evaporates, gases are released, which create a cometary tail that propels the object forward like a rocket. Given this knowledge, it does not sound strange that Oumuamua accelerated away from the sun, if it indeed was a comet. The surface level problem with the outgassing explanation is that there was no evidence of it happening to Oumuamua. Apparently, outgassing is something that we can detect with our current technology, and we have detected it with other comets. The astronomers astronomers tracking Oumuamua believed that the cometary tail caused by outgassing should have been observable, but they couldn't find it. There was no indication of a trail of water vapor, dust particles, or anything else which would be detectable if the acceleration was due to typical outgassing. Given these three traits, the extreme shape, the strange orbital behavior, and the intense reflectivity observed in Oumuamua, Loeb argues that it is not a comet. To the dismay of many scientists, and to my utter joy, the following direct quote from Extraterrestrial explains Loeb's hypothesis. Oumuamua is extraterrestrial technological equipment. That is a hypothesis, not a statement of fact. Like all scientific hypotheses, it awaits its confrontation with data. And, as often happens in science, the data we have is not conclusive, but it is substantial. Unlike most scientists, Loeb is pretty comfortable brainstorming possibilities. He does not shy away from suggesting the possible artificial origin of Oumuamua. As an astrophysicist, he has always been interested in searching for relics of alien civilizations. With so many exoplanets being discovered in the past 30 years, many existing in Goldilocks zones, Loeb argues that relics of ancient life could remain on those planets or in their surrounding orbits, if they existed in the first place, obviously. When study into Oumuamua seemed to follow a trajectory of proving that the object was extremely unique, Loeb wondered if it was possible that Oumuamua could have been artificial, a fragment of technology, a broken piece of equipment, essentially alien garbage. I'm not sure how successfully I'm doing this so far, but what I am trying to do here is not take all of my information from Loeb's book. The thing is, this book is very well written, and at face value to someone like me, it's incredibly convincing. That is why I am trying to get background for each point from more than one source. The one I've cited the most so far being the brief NASA overview page, but there are others. So before I make myself sound a lot more biased than I actually am, I'm going to acknowledge that there have been some serious and specific criticisms of Loeb and his work that should be considered when deciding where you stand on this topic. I'll provide a general summary here, and you can look into these ideas more if you have the interest. And just to be clear, these are not my criticisms. These are the publicly posted concerns cited by members of the scientific community. Lack of evidence. Many astronomers argue that while Oumuamua's behavior was unusual, it doesn't necessitate an alien origin. And obviously, I'd have to agree with this statement. There's no evidence of intelligent origin. There's just a lack of evidence of natural origin. Those 2 points don't mean the same thing. My impression from reading Loeb's rebuttal to this in Extraterrestrial was that he loves thought experiments, but was not necessarily stating that Oumuamua was definitely artificial. Just that a lot more data was needed before we could say with any certainty at all what it was. He also generally seemed to be saying that we specifically should not be identifying it as a comet because all of our data thus far indicates that it was not a comet, so I understand that. Sensationalism and clickbait. Critics accuse Loeb of sensationalizing his findings to gain media attention and promote his work, rather than focusing on rigorous scientific analysis. This is the main criticism I had always heard about Loeb's work. Indications that he was over-sensationalizing Oumuamua to generate interest for things like the Galileo Project and the Starshot Initiative. Responding to this, Loeb describes how he fell into the controversy of Oumuamua unintentionally while co-authoring a journal article on the subject. We submitted that paper to the prestigious scientific journal, the Astrophysical Journal Letters, which specializes in timely and high-impact papers, in late October 2018. Our intention was to engage the attention of our fellow scientists, who we knew were weighing hypotheses against the evidence. In that spirit, we also posted the manuscript before it had been peer-reviewed on the online preprint site. Journalists regularly scour this site for stories, and in short order, 2 of them found our study and raced to report our hypothesis. Their pieces went viral, and by November 6, 2018, everything blew up. Basically, his article had been posted without his knowledge and was now visible to a public audience. Loeb goes on to explain that within hours after the first media reports appeared, he was surrounded by cameras. In response to a reporter showing up at his front door and asking him if he believed that alien civilizations existed, Loeb responded on camera with the following: "A quarter of all stars host a planet the size and surface temperature of the Earth. It would be arrogant to think that we are alone." So my thoughts on this criticism are pretty simple. Is Avi Loeb sensational? Yes, absolutely. He is so much fun. Did his exposure raise awareness for his projects? I'm sure it must have. Was this a calculated and malicious plan concocted by Loeb to further his own interests? I guess we really can't ever know the answer to that for certain, but all I can say is it doesn't feel that way when I read his words. That's obviously just my impression, so please read his book, dig in, and let me know what you think. Alternative explanations. Loeb's claims are contrasted with other scientific explanations, such as the possibility of hydrogen outgassing as a mechanism for the object's acceleration and trajectory. The strange orbital behavior of Oumuamua, to me, was the most compelling feature of this entire debate. And the strangeness hinges on the fact that there was no observable proof of outgassing to explain its acceleration. Recently, some scientists have suggested that the outgassing of Oumuamua may have just been yet another atypical feature of an object that is still nothing more than a very strangely behaving comet. When the traditional route of outgassing failed to explain Oumuamua's acceleration, some began to hypothesize that Oumuamua did indeed experience outgassing, but in a way we had not yet theorized was possible. The result was the newly proposed theory of hydrogen outgassing as an explanation. In one article from space.com, which makes a fart joke in its actual headline, because yeah, that's what skeptics do, the theory is explained like this. The team's calculations showed that, theoretically, the force of this outgassing hydrogen could explain the strange acceleration of Oumuamua. The astronomers even found experimental studies more than 40 years old that demonstrated that high-energy particles, such as those present in cosmic rays, can split molecular hydrogen from water ice, but keep it trapped inside an ice block. So while this type of outgassing has not yet been observed, scientists do believe it's theoretically possible. The article actually also helpfully included Loeb's response to this hypothesis. He contends that the scientists behind this data miscalculated the surface temperature of Oumuamua, resulting in an incorrect estimate of the available amount of hydrogen in the iceberg, which indicates that the outgassing of the available hydrogen could not have produced the observable acceleration. Now, do I know how to fact-check Loeb on his statement? Absolutely not. But in this scenario, neither group has actual evidence. It's just one hypothetical pitted against another. So what do I think? To be perfectly candid, you should not care what I think about this, and I truly hope that you don't. I'm not an expert. I'm no astronomer or astrophysicist. I am a layperson who is biased to believe. But do I really believe that Oumuamua is proof of extraterrestrial intelligence? I guess I'd have to say no today, but it's a damn compelling suggestion. Maybe it's truly just the beginning of a data set. Sometimes events have no meaning until they accumulate and begin to present as a trend. Maybe that will be the case for Oumuamua. Am I satisfied with the comet hypothesis? Also no, but I'm impossible to please. Before we end today, I do want to offer 3 quotes from Extraterrestrial that speak to the possible cultural consequences of Oumuamua, at least from Avi Loeb's point of view. Are we the only intelligent life in the universe? Science fiction narratives have prepared us to expect that the answer is no and that it will arrive with a bang. Scientific narratives tend to avoid the question entirely. The result is that humans are woefully ill-prepared for an encounter with an extraterrestrial counterpart. After the credits roll and we leave the movie theater and look up at the night sky, the contrast is jarring. Above us, we see mostly empty, seemingly lifeless space. But appearances can be deceiving, and for our own good, we cannot allow ourselves to be deceived any longer. Second quote, if we assign a 0 probability for finding evidence of artificial objects, as some scientists did in the case of Oumuamua, if human civilization organizes its efforts and its funding and its scholars by declaring it's never aliens, then we guarantee that we will never find evidence of extraterrestrial civilizations. Third quote, accepting my hypothesis about Oumuamua requires, above all else, humility, because it requires us to accept that while we may be extraordinary, in all likelihood, we are not unique. These quotes were all taken from different sections of Extraterrestrial, but combined together like this, I think they encapsulate a very real danger facing us today. The idea that all of us, skeptics and optimists alike, are so focused on big signs of life, a crashed UFO or a close encounter of the third kind, that we will miss the quiet clues. Maybe Oumuamua was a comet or some other naturally occurring object. That's the easiest explanation. But are we even prepared to recognize something that isn't naturally occurring if it is something as benign as inert alien garbage? Do we have the tools or the social readiness to even see that when it's the true explanation? I'm an optimist to my core, but even I don't think we as a people are there yet, and it's frustrating. At the time of this writing, funding for science is being targeted and slashed as unnecessary spending, which solidifies this opinion in my mind. Even though I myself am not convinced that Oumuamua was unnatural in origin, I still think the debate around it is important. As I said in the beginning, the way we reacted to Oumuamua's strangeness may be more important than what Oumuamua actually is at the end of the day. As is becoming my format, we discussed why people don't believe in the artificial and intelligent nature of Oumuamua, despite its strange properties and characteristics. Citing those same facts, we also discussed why people do believe in a more exotic explanation. We closed by thinking about what this lack of consensus could possibly mean for humanity. Where do we go from here? But now, it's up to you. Where do you stand on the debate over Oumuamua? If you would like to share your story for the podcast, be a guest on the show, suggest an episode, or collaborate in some other way, please send me an email at paranormaloptimist@gmail.com. Go to the episode description to see where you can follow the show and check out all the sources I cited in today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Paranormal Optimist. This show is written, produced, and presented by me, Stephanie. The music in today's episode was obtained royalty-free from Purple Planet Music. See you next time.